Welcome. What a great day. This is a beautiful spring day. Weather's getting warm and flowers are up and gardens are growing this time of year. And I have to say that's really kind of a fresh new life. It comes this time every year. And I hope you are enjoying the blessing of the warm sun and what the rain has done to help things grow. Today, our opening picture comes from Death Valley. Sorry about the morbid name. It's Death Valley has its name for a reason. But if you'll notice those sand dunes and the way the light hits on them, those are massive sand dunes. And this is coming in on the west side of the park. And these are right at the bottom of the valley. When you just arrive at the bottom, you look out to your left and you know, you could just go out there and spend almost a whole day hiking these dunes. They are so big. And so beautiful. So Sherry, I just want to thank you for capturing that story for us just for a moment. And I hope you have some time maybe someday to go and experience the valley itself. And I think we have a picture at the conclusion for you to enjoy as well. So my thanks to Sherry for her work and storytelling that she does for us. All right, let's jump into the Gospel of John again. We are at chapter 6. This is the first half of the chapter. I've divided it into two. And I have a subtitle here called Lunch with Jesus. And, you know, I didn't find an artist's picture, but I found a gentleman feeding someone who is struggling there maybe at a mission and serving a lunch. And I thought, you know, that's a really appropriate picture because that's what the disciples are going to do in this story. They're going to take that food and they're going to hand it out to people who came from miles around to come and hear the words of Jesus, the words of life. And so I'm grateful for Lars Justin and his work that he does. Just one of those really amazing artists that does beautiful pictures as well. So Lunch with Jesus. Let's jump into the story. It says, after these things, that's the things that we've read in chapters 1 through 5. After these things, Jesus went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, also known as Tiberias. A large crowd followed him because they saw the signs that he was performing on those who were sick. Then Jesus went up on the mountain and he sat down with his disciples. Now the Passover feast of the Jews was near. Therefore Jesus, lifting up his eyes and seeing that a large crowd was coming to him, said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread so that these may eat?" Now let me just cover a little bit. Why was there this huge crowd? And that is because people are coming to Passover. And so we're seeing this kind of an annual migration of these multitudes that come to celebrate this significant day in Jewish culture, the Passover. And so understand that when they hear about what is happening, what Jesus is doing, they show up in mass. They want to hear more. Now, in the story, Jesus asks Philip, "Where are we to buy bread so that these may eat?" Now, listen to how John records this. This he was saying to test him, that is Philip, for he himself knew that what he was intending to do. So Jesus wants Philip to have an aha moment. Are you with me on this? Just that, oh dear. And notice Philip's answer. 200 denarii worth of bread is not sufficient for them, for everyone to receive a little. Now, if a denarii was a day's wages, 200 days' wages wasn't enough, because this crowd, you'll see that number here in just a moment, was 5,000 men, which means they did not count the women and the children. So just let that resonate for just a moment. But also notice that Philip says, "Hey, all we have in the bank, Jesus, all we have is 200 denarii. I want you to stop and think about this. The disciples and Jesus, in their journey, in their traveling, are not walking around with this huge amount of money. They, for 12 people, are just humble, living on the means that they have, being careful with it. And Philip immediately realizes that they simply lack enough to take care of this multitude. Hang on. The story gets better. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, and I just want to say something. Andrew has a role in the 12 disciples. He somehow connects with people and brings them to Jesus, as is the case in this story. In verse 9, Andrew says to Jesus, here's a young boy, a lad, here, who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are these for so many people? Jesus said, have the people sit down. Now there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down in number about 5,000. Now please understand this. Barley was a cheap grain, an inexpensive grain. It was like the fisherman's meal. The fisherman's family, they did not roll in the cash. These weren't Alaska salmon fishermen that can, bring in several $1,000s in a day catch. So they're very humble. And they made their bread out of barley, which wasn't nearly as nutritious as the wheat, which was, the finest of bread. And the fish are probably pickled. One commentator said it was very interesting that, the pickled fish kind of helps the dry bread go down just a little bit. It's a little bit tart and just kind of helps the meal go down. So you have the 5 small loaves and the 2 fishes this young boy has. And they're standing in front of 5,000 people. I'm sorry, 5,000 men. So let's just say that this multitude could be somewhere no less than 5,000, obviously. But this number could easily go 8,000. Are you with me on the numbers there? It's really challenging. Okay? Jesus then took the loaves, and having given thanks, he distributed to those who were seated, likewise also the fish as much as they wanted. Did you catch that? Gave thanks, and then started handing it out. And people ate as much as they wanted. Now, once again, we're in Genesis language. We're in that creation language of Genesis, all right? Where what Jesus can do is he can make life out of nothing that we can see. He can make this bread and these fish multiply to the thousands. Point number 1. There was gratitude and thanksgiving in the heart of Jesus to his Father in heaven for this small fare that he had. He had gratitude. Having gratitude for our basics, our provisions that we exist on every day, is a fundamental, basic, Christ-like Christian behavior. This is our reality. What we have comes from God. Everything that we have comes from God. With gratefulness in our hearts, we act in faith, and the results are the blessing of Christ. Understand that. That what you have comes as a blessing from Christ. But in this story, that blessing from Christ is also able to reach out and touch the lives of multitudes with that spirit of gratitude in our heart. What you have, Christ has blessed, certainly has the ability to bless others. So the disciples take the food, and starting it through the huge crowd was a simple act of profound faith on their part. Sometimes we think we have to do some magnificent act or some impressive thing, when more often our acts of faith are as simple as passing a basket of bread to bless someone that Jesus has already blessed. I just cannot tell you that living a life by faith isn't grandiose. It is the humble, simple sharing the blessing of Christ with others with a spirit of gratitude and a spirit of thanksgiving that God has given you the ability to bless another human being or multitudes of other human beings. Fundamental Christianity right there. What does it mean to live by faith as a disciple of Christ? Let's follow the story. When they were filled, he said to his disciples, "Go gather the leftover fragrance so that nothing will be lost." So they gathered them up and filled 12 baskets with the fragments from the 5 barley loaves which were left over by those who had eaten. 12 baskets, that's like one for each disciple. So isn't it just really interesting that in this story, as the disciples come back together now in the presence of Jesus, and they're standing there looking, all of a sudden they realize that this act of faith, of blessing this small amount of loaves and fishes, now has come back to a basket full for each of the 12 disciples. This is not the theology of the gospel of wealth. This is Jesus simply teaching his disciples that it's not about how much you have. It's about how God can take what you have and make it a blessing for others. That's what a life of faith looks like and feels like. And may I say, tastes like. It's really a remarkable story, isn't it? The blessing and the miracle come from the hands of Jesus. It was intended to the disciples, it was handed to the disciples, and the miraculous happens. We receive from Jesus blessings to distribute as we have nothing in ourselves to offer, and Jesus chooses to use his disciples, you and me, that's us, to distribute the bread of life. This is Christ's joy, that we may give it freely and watch it multiply. Do you understand that Jesus wants to multiply the blessing of your faith to the touching, literally, maybe thousands of others? Back to our story, verse 14. Therefore, when the people saw the sign which he had performed, they said, "This is truly the prophet who has come into the world." This is truly the prophet who has come into the world. I wonder what it was like if you were in the back row and 10,000 people had eaten before you, or however many, and this basket comes in front of you, and you're reaching down and you're taking chunks of bread out and a piece of fish. And it's a chunk of bread because they ate what they wanted and what they needed. And you are holding in your hand a miracle of Christ. I wonder what it tastes like. God wants to use you. He wants you to take from his hands and share what he has blessed. He provides the spiritual math and the exponential blessings. We are the distributors of his miracles. It's a profound lesson, isn't it? Our last picture. What I love about this picture is that in Death Valley, keep in mind you're below sea level here. The valley is so deep. But I love how in this valley the layers have been washed in from vast amounts of waters. I would argue in favor of a flood here. But I love how those layers come in and how you can see the dark and the light and the medium and then the dark. If you come into the foreground, you'll see all those other colors are ambers and reds and yellows and grays. There's even blues. It's just one of those really beautiful places that no matter where you look, you cannot help but see something fascinating about our earth. Sherry, thank you for your awesome pictures. Thank you for listening. Hope you have a great blessing today. Take care now. Bye-bye.